Let's deep dive into a mind-blowing YouTube podcast created by artificial intelligence, where you will hear conversations by two AI agents in a way you've never imagined before. This isn't just a podcast, it's a journey into the future, crafted by AI, designed for you. Ready to have your mind blown? Let's begin.
All right, so are you ready to dive into this one?
Let's do it.
Okay, so today we're talking all about Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
One of the most intense books I've ever read.
Really intense.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think there are a lot of different ways to approach this book.
Definitely.
You know, like for some people, it's like a fitness guide or like a self-help book.
Yeah.
But for me, it's really all about mental toughness.
It is. Like, how do you build that resilience? How do you push past those limits that we all kind of put on ourselves? And Goggins really embodies that.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about Goggins is his background, right? I mean, talk about intense.
Yeah.
We're talking about a guy who went from like an abusive childhood, facing racism, poverty, to becoming a Navy SEAL and an ultra marathon runner.
Like, how do you even get there?
It's mind-blowing. And he uses those experiences to fuel his philosophy.
Totally. He doesn't shy away from it at all.
Not at all.
He embraces it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that makes him so compelling is that he's so open and honest about his struggles.
Yeah.
And he doesn't try to sugarcoat anything.
He's like, this is me, take it or leave it.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the first things that really stood out to me in the book was this idea of the accountability mirror.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of this?
Oh, yeah. The sticky notes.
The sticky notes.
Yeah.
It's like brutal honesty, right?
It's brutal. You're calling yourself out on everything.
Like everything.
Yeah.
And I think the idea is that you can't avoid those weaknesses if they're staring you in the face every morning.
Every time you look in the mirror, it's like a slap in the face.
And it actually worked for him.
It did. He lost over 100 pounds in 3 months.
To qualify for Navy SEAL training.
That's insane.
I know. It's incredible. So for our listeners out there, what do you think is a practical takeaway from the accountability mirror concept?
It's got to be about taking action. I think a lot of us get stuck in that analysis paralysis. Like, we overthink things, we overanalyze our weaknesses, but we don't actually do anything about them.
Totally.
So for me, it's like, pick one thing. Maybe it's like you said, you want to be more proactive at work.
Right.
Write that down.
Yeah.
And put it somewhere you're going to see it every day.
Every single day.
Make it unavoidable.
So it's like that constant reminder to hold yourself accountable.
Exactly.
Right.
Like your own personal drill sergeant, but in a Post-it note form.
I love that. Okay, so building on this idea of pushing limits, Goggins talks about this concept he calls callousing the mind.
Oh, yeah, this is a big one.
And he developed this through his experience with Hell Week.
Which is basically the most brutal part of Navy SEAL training.
And he went through it 3 times.
3 times? Are you kidding me?
I know. It's insane. I can't even imagine.
5.5 days, continuous training, on like 4 hours of sleep.
They're trying to break you.
They are.
Yeah.
It's designed to weed people out.
And he saw it as a way to callous his mind.
To build up that resilience against pain and fear.
So he's basically saying that by repeatedly exposing ourselves to discomfort, we build that mental toughness.
Exactly. It's like building a muscle, but for your mind.
Yeah. And you're not going to get those results by like lifting the lightest weights.
Nope. Got to challenge yourself. Got to push past that point of comfort.
So for someone who's not planning on signing up for Hell Week anytime soon.
Right, because I don't think I am.
Yeah, me neither.
I think it's about finding those small opportunities to step outside your comfort zone.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so have you ever heard of taking cold showers?
Oh, gosh.
They're brutal.
I can imagine.
But they're actually really good for you. Physiologically.
I mean,
yeah, like boosts your circulation, and it can help with like stress and anxiety. So maybe start there. Or maybe it's finally having that difficult conversation you're putting off.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's about facing those things that make you uncomfortable and realizing that you can handle them.
That you're stronger than you think. Okay, I love that. So speaking of pushing limits, Goggins has this other concept called the 40% rule.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So basically, he believes that when we think we're done, we've actually only used about 40% of our true capacity.
Wow.
Yeah, and he backs this up with some pretty crazy stories.
Oh, I bet.
Like running 101 miles in under 19 hours during an ultramarathon. And he did this with kidney failure and broken feet.
No way.
Yes. So he's basically saying that our limits are often self-imposed.
Yeah, we give up because of what we think we can handle.
Right.
not because we've actually reached our true potential.
Exactly. So how do we even begin to approach this 40% rule? It seems so daunting.
I think it's about those small incremental wins. Like think about a time you hit a wall during a workout.
Yeah.
Did you stop there, or did you find a way to push just a little bit further?
This is a good point.
The 40% rule is a reminder that we almost always have more to give.
If we're willing to dig deep enough.
Exactly. It's about tapping into that reserve tank that we all have.
And this isn't just about physical challenges, right? This applies to mental challenges too.
Absolutely. Like when you're working on a tough project and you feel like giving up,
Right.
remember that 40% rule?
Yeah.
You probably have more in you than you think.
It's about pushing past those mental barriers.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the accountability mirror callousing the mind and the 40% rule.
All pretty intense concepts.
Very intense. But I think they all tie into this bigger idea of building mental toughness.
Yeah, and it's not like Goggins just woke up one day with this incredible mental strength.
Right.
He had to develop it.
He had a really rough childhood.
Yeah, abuse, poverty, racism, like you name it, he faced it.
But instead of letting those experiences break him,
He used them to make him stronger,
he calls his childhood a training ground for mental toughness.
which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, so it's about finding that strength within the struggle.
Totally. Turning adversity into a source of power.
And I think that's something we can all learn from.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's about reframing our perspective on challenges.
So instead of viewing them as roadblocks,
We can see them as opportunities for growth.
I love that.
Me too. It's a powerful shift in mindset.
So Goggins gives us a lot to think about in just the first few chapters of his book.
He does.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to uncover.
There is. We'll be back next week to dive into some of his other principles, like taking soul's visualization and the cookie jar.
I can't wait.
Me neither. It's going to be good.
Okay, so you ready to keep going with this?
I think so. I'm a little scared, but I'm ready.
All right, well, let's talk about embracing the uncomfortable.
Okay, here we go.
This is where Goggins really wants us to push those limits,
Like way beyond our comfort zones.
way beyond. Like he talks about running ultra marathons with barely any training.
Which is insane.
Totally insane. Or like pushing for world records even if you fail a couple times first.
Oh, yeah. And he does have a world record.
He does. For pull-ups.
Yeah, 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours.
How is that even possible?
I don't know. But what I thought was really interesting was that he actually failed 2 times before he got the record.
Yeah, he talks about those failures a lot, actually.
He does. And he doesn't see them as like a reason to quit.
No way. He sees them as part of the process.
Yeah, like a stepping stone to success.
Exactly. So it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about getting back up when you fall down.
So embracing the uncomfortable, it's not about avoiding discomfort.
No, it's about leaning into it,
Even when it feels really, really hard.
especially when it feels hard.
Because that's where the growth happens.
That's where you get stronger.
Okay, so how do we actually do that?
How do we embrace the uncomfortable without, like, running an ultra marathon?
Yeah, I'm not ready for that.
Me neither. I think it's about those small, everyday challenges.
Okay, so like what?
Well, think about something you've been avoiding something. Something that makes you a little bit anxious.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it's having a tough conversation with someone,
Ooh, yeah.
or speaking up in a meeting at work.
Or trying a new workout class.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about pushing those boundaries little by little.
And I think it's also about recognizing that discomfort is not always a bad thing.
Right. It's often a sign that we're growing.
Like when you're learning a new skill and it feels frustrating,
Totally.
Yeah.
That frustration means you're stretching yourself.
you're pushing past your limits.
And that's a good thing.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
But what about when discomfort feels really overwhelming?
Like when it feels like too much.
Yeah, like when you just want to give up.
I think that's when we need to remind ourselves of our past successes.
Oh, like the cookie jar.
Exactly. Dip into that jar and remember all those times you pushed through and came out stronger.
That's such a good visual.
It is.
Yeah.
It's about using our past experiences to fuel our present efforts.
And I think it's also about having a support system.
Totally. Having people around you who believe in you and encourage you.
Because sometimes we need that extra push.
We do. We're not meant to do this alone.
All right, so we've talked about embracing the uncomfortable.
One of Goggins' most challenging principles, for sure.
But I think it's also one of the most rewarding.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because when we push past our comfort zones,
We discover what we're truly capable of.
and that's a pretty amazing feeling.
Okay, so let's move on to another one of Goggins' principles.
All right, what's next?
This one's called taking souls.
Oh boy, this sounds intense.
It does. I know. But it's actually not as scary as it sounds.
Okay, you're going to have to explain this one.
I will. So when Goggins talks about taking souls, he's using a metaphor. And he's basically talking about outworking and outperforming others
Okay.
to gain a mental advantage.
So it's like a competitive mindset.
It is, but it's not about being ruthless or cutthroat.
Oh, I think that's good.
It's about pushing yourself to such a high standard
Yeah.
that it inspires others to elevate their own game.
So it's like leading by example.
Exactly. And Goggins gives this example of motivating his boat crew during Hell Week to outperform the instructor's expectations.
So he's not trying to tear anyone down,
No, he's trying to bring everyone up.
to push everyone to their limits.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important distinction.
It is. Because it's not about ego.
Right.
It's about teamwork.
But like a super intense form of teamwork.
I can imagine.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about visualization.
All right. I'm interested in this one.
I think a lot of people are familiar with the concept of visualization.
Yeah, like athletes use it a lot.
Yeah, but Goggins takes it to a whole other level.
Okay, how so?
He was super meticulous about it.
What do you mean?
Like, he wouldn't just visualize success.
Mm-hmm.
He would visualize every single obstacle,
Yeah.
every potential pain point,
Wow.
and he would mentally rehearse how he would overcome each one.
That's incredible.
It is. And he believed that this mental preparation was key to his success.
So he's basically pre-programming his mind for success.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all apply to our own lives.
Yeah, even if we're not training for like a SEAL mission or an ultra marathon.
Right. So how do we do that? How do we start incorporating visualization into our daily lives?
Well, I think the key is to be specific.
Okay.
So instead of just picturing yourself achieving a goal, break it down into smaller steps
Okay.
and visualize each step in detail.
So like if you have a big presentation coming up,
Yeah.
don't just visualize yourself giving an amazing speech.
Right.
Visualize yourself preparing for the presentation.
Uh-huh.
Visualize yourself walking up to the podium.
Yeah.
Visualize yourself making eye contact with the audience.
Wow, that's really helpful.
It is. And the more detail you can add, the better.
So it's almost like creating a mental movie
Exactly.
of how you want things to go.
And by doing that, you're training your mind
Yeah.
to handle those challenges.
It's like mental rehearsal.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. So we've talked about how Goggins uses visualization to prepare for these crazy challenges, but I think it's really cool how he also applies it to everyday life.
Yeah, he's all about taking those same principles and using them to level up in every area.
Right, because it's not just about physical strength.
Yeah.
No, it's about mental strength,
Oh,
emotional
great.
strength, like building that overall resilience.
And that brings us back to one of his core principles, embracing the uncomfortable.
Yeah, this one really is the foundation of his whole philosophy, isn't it?
It is. It's about recognizing that growth happens outside of our comfort zones.
Totally. Like if you're always playing it safe, you're never going to reach your full potential.
And he's not just talking about physical discomfort either.
No, he's talking about pushing past those mental and emotional barriers too.
Like having those tough conversations that you've been putting off.
Uh-huh. Or taking on a new project that feels really intimidating.
Or putting yourself out there even when you feel vulnerable.
It's about challenging yourself to grow in every way.
But isn't there a risk of taking this embrace the uncomfortable thing too far?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, where do you draw the line between a healthy challenge and just like self-destruction?
Right, because you don't want to push yourself so hard that you burn out.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance between pushing your limits and knowing when to rest and recover.
So it's like finding that perfect weight at the gym.
Yeah, challenging enough to build muscle, but not so heavy that you injure yourself.
I like that analogy. And I think it all comes down to self-awareness.
Totally. You got to listen to your body, you got to listen to your mind.
And know when to push harder and when to ease up.
Exactly. It's a constant process of learning and adjusting.
Okay, so for someone who's listening to this and thinking, all right, I want to embrace some discomfort, where do I start?
It's a good question. I think the best advice is to start small.
Oh, okay.
Pick one thing that you've been avoiding, something makes you a little uneasy, but you know it would be good for you.
Give me an example.
Okay, so maybe it's waking up an hour earlier to go for a run.
Oof, that's a tough one.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's also a great way to start your day.
True.
Or maybe it's finally signing up for that public speaking class.
Oh, yeah, I've been wanting to do that.
See, there you go. It's about taking those small steps outside of your comfort zone.
And building up that resilience.
Exactly. Because the more you do it, the easier it gets.
And the more comfortable you become with being uncomfortable.
Which is kind of the point, right?
It is. And that resilience, that mental toughness, it spills over into every area of your life.
Totally. It's like a superpower.
It is. It's like that unshakable belief in yourself that you can handle anything.
That's the Goggins mindset.
The can't hurt me mindset.
Exactly. And it's something we can all cultivate.
All right, so I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. We've gone deep into the world of David Goggins.
We've explored his incredible life story and his powerful principles for building mental toughness.
We've talked about the accountability mirror, the 40% rule, the cookie jar visualization, and of course, embracing the uncomfortable.
And I hope our listeners have come away with some valuable insights.
Me too, because this stuff is truly life-changing.
It is. It's about pushing past those self-imposed limitations and discovering our true potential.
And remember, this is not a one-time fix.
Right.
It's an ongoing journey.
It's about constantly challenging ourselves to learn and grow.
And to embrace the discomfort that comes with that growth.
Because that's where the magic happens.
It does. So as Goggins would say, stay hard.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
We'll be back next week with a whole new set of ideas to explore.
Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, you are capable of more than you think.